Hello, hello. Hey, welcome to Good Thinking Live. Here on my glasses. Look at my glasses. These are my glasses so I can see the screen and see your comments, and then they kind of go like this. And I have a green screen today because I'm in a different spot. But anyway, welcome to Good Thinking Live. Welcome, good thinkers. If you are here on LinkedIn Live, welcome. If you are here on YouTube Live, welcome too. The one thing that is different is on LinkedIn Live, if you are here, you can comment, and you know this because you're part of the show, and you can comment live, and we're going to be working through a bunch of stuff together. And if you're here on YouTube, I won't be able to see your comments until later. Now, if you want to get notifications, LinkedIn, you have to follow me on LinkedIn, Becky Saltzman on LinkedIn. But if you want to get notifications on YouTube, then you have to hit that little subscribe button on Becky Saltzman's YouTube, my YouTube channel. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Please let me know who you are and where you're from. That's like the most fun part of this. And for those of you who are new, you need to know that the Good Thinking Show is just a little opportunity, a very short opportunity to spend a little bit of time away from all the time that we are told what to think and learn what to think, to devote just a little bit more time to improving how we think. So that's all it is. And today we're going to do something really fun and cool that will take us kind of into the future, which is go through and finalize the Good Thinking Manifesto. But we're not just going to read it all. We're going to also make sure that we understand it. And we're also going to say, hey, listen, if we don't want this one in the manifesto, we're going to knock it out. Or if we think something else should be in the manifesto, we'll bring it in. But this is when we're going to finalize the Good Thinking Manifesto. And then we need to figure out how to spread good thinking throughout the world to get more good thinkers. All right, let's see who's here early. Let's see. We've got Turkey. Hi, Turkey. And we've got Stephen from Soccer City, USA. And Turkey is from Turkey, Kese. And welcome. This is going to be a great show. The first question for everyone to weigh in, other than let me know where you are, where you're tuning in from, and who you are, is the world is changing. I mean, that's not profound. It seems to be rapidly changing. What should you learn next? I was thinking, I'm not that crafty. So, I don't really necessarily, should I learn how to cook? Should I learn, how to write machine learning programming, how to write machine learning programs? Should I go back to math? And one of the things that I think I should learn is probably, maybe this is just my own thought, is maybe more about how to trade resources in the event that I don't have access to the resources that are commonly tradable. So how to understand what I can offer that would be tradable in an economy where maybe money isn't the issue, money isn't available. And that's just my weird thing. So I don't know, what should you, I should say, not what could you, but what should you learn next? All right. Oh, hi, Ibrahim. I always pronounce it wrong, and I'm so sorry. I'm horrible because I can't see, and then I have to pronounce it quickly, from Egypt, but welcome. Master's student in environmental studies. Okay, that's great, because environmental studies is probably, that's what we should learn. That's what at least some of you good thinkers should learn, is how to protect the environment. Thank you. Let's see. We've got Dhruv from India. I'm probably mispronouncing your name, but when I see the names that I see regularly, the other good thinkers, I'm like, oh, you're here. And then I mispronounce the name. Just so you know, I also mispronounce my own kids' names sometimes. So I've called them the dog before, Anyway, but I'm happy that you're all here. All right. We're going to go over the Good Thinking Manifesto. But before we do, and before you weigh in, because you guys are going to be the ones to help finalize and create it, I was asked a question: is good thinking the same as intelligence? And the short answer is no. Intelligence is a construct that we use an intelligence test, or IQ, to. It was really kind of to measure academic achievement. So it correlates, these tests correlate with academic achievement. So the people who create the test kind of also are looking at one particular element of achievement. And this, the reason I bring this up is because as we're going through the Good Thinking Manifesto, it's important to understand concepts like reliability and validity. And looking at the intelligence or IQ test to kind of tease out these differences is really helpful. So the difference between reliability and validity is that reliability is replicatable. Can you rely on the same results over and over again? And looking at intelligence, the answer is, from a statistical standpoint, yeah, it's pretty reliable. These tests are pretty reliable. You can get different scores if you're sick or anxious, obviously. And it's very reliable in the middle, where most of us are, but we all think we're on one. We all think we're on the other end, but most of us are lumped in the middle where it's very reliable. Validity has to do with bias. So you'll see that both reliability and validity are part of the Good Thinking Manifesto. So that's why I'm kind of trying to tease this out to begin with. So validity is it bias? And it turns out that, it is a good measure. I'm looking at my phone so I can see comments. It is a good measure of academic achievement. It is reliable in that sense, and it's less valid. But there's some validity issues because academic achievement has bias built in. But also outside of academic achievement, its validity kind of isn't quite as strong. So it's important to understand when you're looking at something, when you're thinking about something, when you're doing good thinking, to think about the difference between reliability, replicatable, and valid. Does it have bias? All right. So that's just a little kind of measure, because good thinking is outside of, IQ or intelligence. Good thinking is learnable. That anyone can learn to be a good thinker, but it's not our default way of thinking. So if you're not consciously trying to do it, or consciously somewhere where other people are talking about it, then it's not just going to happen through, osmosis, for example. Anyway, all right, let me say hi to a few people. We've got someone from Mexico, fantastic. And Ibrahim, yes, there are so many types of intelligence. Absolutely. And that's, what, I'm going to pull this. I'm going to try to see if I can pull your comment to the screen. I just want to highlight this. Yes, there are so many kinds of intelligence. I want to highlight how do I, let's see if I can, now we can get it back over here. I just wanted to highlight that because it is very true. But good thinking exists outside of that, and it's for everyone. And yet, as we are seeing, it's a lot rarer than we like to think. All right. So now we're going to get into the Good Thinking Manifesto. No one put down what you should learn next, except for we've got the environmental study. So what should you learn next? And it could be in school. It could just be something that you're going to learn this week, today. What should you learn next? All right. Knowing is not enough, because you need to know how to apply different things, what you learn, to different contexts. And that, you'll see, is also one of the things in the Good Thinking Manifesto. So we're going to start with number 1. And again, if you think this should definitely be in the Good Thinking Manifesto, please put a thumbs up in the comments. And if you're not sure, you could put not sure, or you could put thumbs down. But be sure to put the number so that we know which one it's applying to, because there might be a lag. Or maybe you're watching this later and you're not watching this live, and we want people to weigh in. All right, so the first good thinking bullet in the manifesto is good thinkers are curious. Now, curiosity is my jam. That's my company, is Applied Curiosity Lab. And I want to describe a little bit of the different way of thinking about curiosity so that we can understand it. We usually think of curiosity as like the childlike sense of wonder, staring up at the stars, the kid who asks all the questions. And that is a form of curiosity. In that context, it is called free-range curiosity. Think of it like basic science. Like maybe you're studying the molecular structure of cells, or you're studying the environment to just better understand the environment. The other kind of curiosity, which is really the curiosity that most of my work is involved in, is applied curiosity. And that is the application of curiosity to solve specific problems or do specific things. If you think about it like more like applied science. So in this case, maybe it'd be studying the molecular structure of cells to find, maybe cancer protocols or more chemotherapy protocols, treatments, whatever. So these two kinds of curiosity are important. We tend to say, oh, remember when we were so curious? Children are so curious. We lose our curiosity, but really we're conflating. We're talking about two different kinds of curiosity. So what do you guys think about free range versus applied curiosity? If you had to say, what do you spend more time with? Free range curiosity or applied curiosity, what would it be? All right. We've got, Chris Olson. Okay, we've got Chris. I think you need finite openness to alternative hypothesis. Okay, good, because I'm glad you said that, because we're going to get to hypothesis and the difference between conclusions and assumptions and hypothesis in the Good Thinking Manifesto. These are great. Number one, number sense and statistics. Oh, Chris, number sense and statistics. Okay, I'm going to change mine to that thing. I think we need to understand probability, and I think we see most journalists don't understand probability. So an example that I saw was there was some kind of new treatment protocol for cancer, I think it was, and the new treatment protocol it was 100% increase, more likely to cause like something bad, like death. And it was like out of 1,000 people, or maybe it was 2,000 patients, it had a 100% increase in the probability of death, or the likelihood of killing you. Now, no one would take that drug, right? You would be like, 100% increase in from the old drug to the new drug, no thank you. But it turns out that out of 1,000 people, let's say, I can't remember however many people were in the study, one person had an adverse reaction with the old drug, and 2 people had an adverse reaction with the new drug. Now, the new drug also had incredible benefits, longevity, etc. But when they heard 100% increase in the probability of death, people were like, oh my God. So that's a good point. I think it's really good. I should put that one up there too. I'm going to put numbers. I'm going to show this one. I'm going to highlight this one, because number sense and statistics is something we all need to get better at, especially when we have all this access to information. So thank you, Chris. Now, if I don't put your thing up there, it doesn't mean that I didn't love it. It just means I can't see very well. Things are scrolling fast. All right. So that is great. Now, so we've got number one, good thinkers are curious. Number two, good thinkers prioritize reliable and relevant information. Now, we talked at the beginning, what does it mean for information to be reliable? But we also have to talk about relevance. And sometimes that dips into the difference between science and pseudoscience. And often, both are produced with the best of intentions. Researchers are responding to skewed incentives, sometimes with pseudoscience. And people say, oh, science is just, ridiculous. No, science is a method. And when you disprove something that was previously thought to be possibly true, that shows you the scientific method in action. It doesn't mean that you toss out science. Pseudoscience has no basis in the scientific method, and it does not attempt to follow procedures. So the scientific method is procedures. Now, we need to know this, because you can't replicate if you're not using a method of replication, meaning reliability. Also, relevance. How many times are people throwing out something that is really irrelevant to the argument at hand? So good thinkers know to prioritize reliability and relevance. What do you think? Up, down, up, down. For example, COVID-19 is an environmental case to start with. Oh, that is super interesting. And you are touching on something. You're touching on one of my favorite topics. I agree. Let me see what else we have. Let's see. Do we have, okay, so we have a thumbs up. So is that a thumbs up for number one or number two? So just put, if you think curiosity, reliability, and relevance, let's make sure we have that. Good, number three. Drum roll, please. Where are my chickens? I mean, I told you I'm in a different room. I don't know where my chickens are. I can't do my chickens, my rubber chickens. But number 3, good thinkers can change their minds in the face of good evidence. This is a hard one. We are hardwired to be consistent with things that we put ourselves out there. I'm someone who believes in this. And then when we get evidence that tells us we might be wrong, it's really, really hard to change our minds. And this is why we should separate the idea from the person. And I think it was Majid Nawaz who said, no idea is above scrutiny. You can scrutinize, you can interrogate any idea, but no person is beneath dignity. And I think that is such an elegant way of saying, okay, don't make your idea so much about yourself that you can't change your mind. And I think another way to say it is strong ideas loosely held. And so the question is, what was the last significant thing you changed your mind about? Something that you really, not like I'm gonna have tacos for dinner. No, I think I'll have a falafel pita or something. It's not like that. I'm talking about what was the last thing you changed your mind about? All right. Chris says, I believe that too, although for some alternatives you have to go beyond that. Yeah, number 3 up, 3 yes. Okay, so we're getting some good voting in. If you're here, please vote, because we're creating this manifesto and then we're going to do some really cool things with it. And I want to make sure that we say, okay, these are the good thinkers that help create the manifesto. All right. I want your name on this. This is good stuff. All right. So number 4, good thinkers. This is a good one, I think. Good thinkers know the difference between assumptions, hypotheses, and conclusions. And sometimes you go, and you should pause, because even though you might go, yeah, I know that, pause and really make sure that you can, not only you understand it, but you could literally explain this to a 4th grader. Like you could explain this to a 10-year-old. The difference between assumptions, hypotheses, and conclusions. Assumptions are things that are accepted as truth or accepted as likely to happen with no proof. And we have to, in our good thinking, sometimes tease out the assumptions that we just hold to be safe and true. Even if they're safe, even if it's likely, highly likely, to identify it as an assumption is still a better idea than to identify it as a conclusion. All right, hypotheses. These are proposed explanations or suppositions, like I suppose, I predict, or I think, but made on the basis of limited evidence. So it's not just something you pull out of your head. You have limited evidence. You know it's limited. You know it's not enough, and it's a starting point for further investigation. Like I suspect that COVID has environmental origins. Now, that is a hypothesis, and then when you get more evidence, you can actually make it into a theory. All right, but what you don't want to do is turn it into a conclusion and mischaracterize it as a conclusion when we don't have enough evidence. And when we do, and we never really have enough evidence, we should always be poking at it. That's the scientific method. So conclusions are drawn after an experiment is performed. And it's reported whether or not the evidence supports the hypothesis. So this is one of the things in a lot of scientific research where, you have this hypothesis and then you find out the evidence doesn't support it, so it doesn't get published. So sometimes what people do is something called p-hacking, where they look at all the evidence and then they make the conclusion based on the evidence they see. They go back. And that's kind of bad science, not good thinking. So the conclusion is you have your hypothesis, you identify your assumptions, but then you see the evidence and you come to a conclusion. And the conclusion should be, it could be a strong belief, but it should be loosely held. All right, that's the difference between assumptions, hypothesis, and conclusions. That's good thinkers know the difference. All right, that's number 4. All right. My point of view about the power of knowledge and its power to change human behavior by itself. Yes, Okay, so we've got some, I'm going to have to look on my phone because I have to get close to the, I'm going to look on my phone to see, so I can also hit the comments. So just a second, go like this. I want to be able to see the comments because sometimes I miss them. So we'll see what it's doing like this. Anyway, all right, number 5, good thinkers, and this is huge. Ready? Good thinkers can accurately represent different viewpoints. This is hard. It is really easy to represent someone else's viewpoint from your viewpoint, i.e., that's really dumb. But it is very difficult to represent a different viewpoint from the person who holds that different viewpoint. And that reminds me of a John Stuart Mill quote. I'm going to change it because I like to change it, which is, she who knows only her side of the case knows little of that. Now you can imagine it's probably written, he who knows only his side of the case knows little of that, but I changed the gender for fun. But the point is, if you know your side of the case really, really well, and you don't know the other side, someone else's viewpoint, you really don't know enough about the topic. So you need to be able to represent other people's viewpoints. And when you think about someone you really disagree with, who comes to mind? Write it in the chat. Who comes to mind when you think about someone you really disagree with? Could you represent their viewpoint? Not with a straw man. So a straw man fallacy is one of the tricky things that prevents this good thinking. And this occurs when you take someone else's viewpoint with whom you disagree and you mischaracterize their viewpoint. So you throw your arguments at that mischaracterization. So imagine a situation where you are in a business meeting or with a bunch of friends and they say something like, I don't think we should just hire people from, such and such university. And because it seems like we've hired a lot of people from this university. And then the person who makes the straw man fallacy argument says, oh, let's just throw out all the criteria for hiring and just throw out all the criteria for hiring and we'll just pick from a hat. And the person's like, well, that's not really what I said. I didn't say to pick from a hat. I said, let's not just look at these one or two prestigious universities to draw from. So that's a mischaracterization of the argument. Straw man fallacy, very common. All right. I'm not seeing the scrolling of the things, but we're trying here. Okay, there's a little. All right, next. So what do you think about being able to represent the other viewpoint, number 5, as one of the good thinking things? I'm not getting any, whatever. All right, number 6, good thinkers can spot cognitive biases in their own thinking. So I think a lot of us have now gotten to the point where maybe we've studied a few of the biases. We see confirmation bias, where we seek evidence that supports our pre-existing beliefs and dismiss evidence that does not. We see that, but we see it in other people. And this tendency to see biases in other people is actually called the blind spot bias. It's a bias within a bias. So the key here with the good thinking is to be able to spot biases in our own thinking. And we'll spend some time on the show going over a bunch of really interesting cognitive biases that may or may not surprise you. I'll be curious to hear. I can catch them. I can catch biases much easier in other people than in my own thinking, but I know to constantly turn it back and turn it back and turn it back because I need to be able to spot my own cognitive biases. All right. So that's number 6. We're getting some good voting in now, finally. Okay. Number 7, good thinkers know that what we perceive is never all that there is. Now, some people could look at this as spiritual or religious or metaphysical. I'm going to get right down to just senses, seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting. Now, we know that there are all kinds of animals that can see infrared. There's some kind of snakes. Some people refer to the snake's ability to see infrared as a 6th sense. There's blood-sucking insects like bed bugs and mosquitoes, and they use their infrared vision to feed themselves. Some fish, goldfish, some other fish, frogs. Bullfrogs can see infrared light, and they have the eyes that can see both above and below the water surface. And it's kind of interesting. And they use some kind of vitamin interaction to supercharge their vision. So we know that there are all kinds of things. What about smell? Sense of smell. Black bears have been observed to travel 18 miles in a straight line to a food source. And grizzlies can smell an elk carcass, like a dead elk, when it's underwater. And polar bears can smell a seal through 3 feet of ice. So we know that, we don't even have as humans, what we perceive as a fraction of what's out there. Hearing, pigeons can hear infrasound, which is of this low frequency sound. And this is why a lot of people have found that animals that can experience or perceive this infrasound can hear earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and all kinds of things before we perceive them. We need instruments. We need different kinds of counters, different measuring implements. So we augment our own perception with tools, but what we perceive is only a fraction of what's out there. Anyway, so good thinkers know this. That's number 7. All models are imprecise. Exactly, 7. Chris says all models are imprecise. It's exactly true. Probably even the perception models within the animal world or the living world that can perceive things that we can't. All of those are probably somewhat imprecise too. And we try to make our tools more and more precise. That's one, again, we work toward increasing our understanding of the world. Number 8, good thinkers can distinguish between fact claims and value claims. This is a simple one, but the soccer pitch is crowded is a value claim. The soccer pitch has 8 or 11 players on it is a fact claim. And sometimes we make mistakes not, thinking that, well, it's a fact that there were a lot of people down there. That's a value claim. It's not a fact claim. The fact that there were, 583,000 people there is a fact claim. The fact that there were a lot of people there is a value claim. Just simple, but it's important to check ourselves to understand, because that's what good thinkers. What about smoking is unhealthy? Is that a fact claim or a value claim? That's a tricky one. Put it in the comments. See what you guys think. All right, number 9. Good thinkers apply insights from one context to the next. And as you remember, good thinking is the 3 legs of the stool: critical thinking, creative thinking, and strategic thinking. And this, applying insights from one to the next, would fall under what? Most likely, or more clearly, strategic thinking. So learning is an act of incorporating new facts and concepts and abilities into our brain. And the more we develop an understanding of the world, the easier it is for us to adapt and pivot when our circumstances change. So that adaptability. And I learned about cooking from this barbecue YouTube channel, and I'm going to now apply that to my basketball game, for example. I don't know how that would work, but I'm going to go, maybe I'm an athlete and I'm going to apply some of the skills that I learned from barbecue to increasing my athletic, getting in shape or whatever. The greatest enemy of this, the greatest enemy of learning is what you know, what you already know. Because what you already know, for non-good thinkers, can get in the way of what you need to know to move forward, to maybe let that go by the wayside or augment it, because without curiosity, we can assume too soon that with all we know enough. So good thinkers apply insights from one context to the next. All right, that's number 9. Number 10. Actually, give me one more second on number 9. I want to just say that if you really want to know how to do this, one of the things is to study the big ideas. Study the big ideas from physics, biology, psychology, philosophy, literature, and sociology. All right. Maybe in biology, it's the cellular basis of life, or information and heredity, matter and energy. Maybe in psychology, it could be mood freezing or facial feedback as the origins of psychosis. I mean, you could just decide, I'm going to learn something within each of these fields. In philosophy, it could be stoicism or ethics or morality. Literature, it might be things like compassion or courage and death. Sociology, maybe relationship churning, or maybe if you're a Brene Brown fan, it could be shame or vulnerability. But really going to these main ologies, right? And trying to learn some new things and then just mix and match and apply them. That can be like a really fun project if you're a nerd, like we probably are. I say that in the best way possible. All right, number 10, good thinkers avoid logical fallacies in their own arguments. Now we'll do one of these shows on logical fallacies, but two of the big ones just to kind of look out for as you're moving forward. We touched on straw man. Straw man is one of the common logical fallacies where you mischaracterize someone's argument in order to win your argument. Now, if you're competing in a debate and you want to try that and the judges don't catch you, fine. But it's not really, it's a logical fallacy. It's not good argumentation. Ad hominem is another one that we touched on, but the ad hominem fallacy is when you attack the person versus attacking the argument. And we are seeing this a lot on Twitter, where someone that you don't like or someone with whom you don't agree might make a point that's worthwhile, but you can't stand this person, and so you can't even see where they might be making a good point. Or you attack that person instead of their argument. Well, you're just a this. That is a logical fallacy, a very common ad hominem. So good thinkers avoid those in their own arguments. That's number 10. Okay, Chris says, number 9, the great 1800 scientists used analogy to create hypotheses on other fields. Yes. And reasoning by analogy is something very common, but it also can help. It can also make it so that you don't see first principles. So you miss first principle thinking. So it's a good tool as long as you catch yourself. That's getting a little nerdy, but I agree with you. That's great. All right, number 11. We're almost done. Good thinkers know. This is one that I'm not sure that should be in there. Number 11, I really need your help. Should this be in the Good Thinking Manifesto or not? It can still be important, but is it as important as the other ones? I don't know. Good thinkers know when to apply validated solutions and when to seek innovative solutions. Should that be in the manifesto? You know, because sometimes validation requires constant innovation, and they're not necessarily, I'm having my doubts about having this one in the manifesto, but I'm willing to be convinced that it should be in there if you disagree. All right. Again, they know the difference. It's important to know the difference, but maybe that's not so important because that could get the Good Thinking Manifesto down to 11, which would be perfect. So the last one, you ready? Number 12, good thinkers know the difference between reasoning and rationalizing. And this to me is like, I love starting with the curiosity and then ending with the reasoning and rationalizing. So let's just make sure we understand it. Make sure it's because we're not gonna, it's not just for ourselves. We want other people, like we want to go out there and share good thinking. We want to share this manifesto so that we have more thinkers because our future depends on it. All right. So reasoning is starting from things that you believe and making an argument and then drawing whatever conclusion wherever that conclusion takes you. So you might believe something and you make an argument. And then you draw a conclusion that wherever that argument takes you. All right. Whereas rationalizing is starting from the conclusion. So one, you're starting from something you might believe, and you're kind of going to where that conclusion might take you. You don't have the conclusion at the beginning with reasoning. With rationalizing, you start with the conclusion, and then you figure out what beliefs support that and what you need to have here and the arguments you need to have there. It's like, I want to make bread. And so then you go find all the ingredients and say, look I have bread. That's kind of not the best example. But with reasoning, you do not start with a conclusion. with rationalizing, you start with a conclusion. So number 12, good thinkers know the difference between reasoning and rationalizing. All right. So that's the manifesto. How much time do we have? We're done. We're supposed to be short. So just want to thank everyone for being here. Please, if you're listening, subscribe on YouTube, but be here on LinkedIn. 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'm here in Portland. I can give you we might talk a little bit about what's going on in Portland. How many of you have heard of what's going on in Portland from all over the world? A little perspective. Or 4 p.m. So 9 a.m. Portland Pacific time in the United States, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, wherever you are. Monday mornings, Monday afternoons, Monday evenings, depending on your time, right here on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube. And if you're watching this later, I'm going to get to all the comments to the extent that I can find them. And then we've got to figure out, what should we do with this manifesto? Do you guys want a printed copy? Should we make a poster? How can we spread good thinking? I'm asking you, good thinkers. Thank you very much for being here. See you next week. Go out. Also, if you have a favorite one of these manifesto points, share it with me. Please teach at least one other person one of these points in the Good Thinking Manifesto today. Share it. Social media. Call a friend. Spread good thinking. See you next week.